The restaurant was alive with noise, laughter, and the clatter of silverware. Servers weaved between tables, balancing trays heavy with steaming dishes. Amid the chaos, Emma moved with practiced grace. She was quick, attentive, but more than that. She noticed the little things others overlooked. At table 9, an 8-year-old boy sat stiffly in his chair, small hands gripping the edge of the table as though holding on for dear life. His dark eyes darted around the room, wide and restless. When a nearby chair scraped loudly against the floor, he flinched as if struck. His breathing quickened. "Tyler, sit properly," the nanny muttered, tugging his sleeve. Her voice was sharp, impatient. The boy's chest rose and fell rapidly, his fingers now clenching into fists. A couple at the next table whispered with thinly veiled annoyance, rolling their eyes at the disturbance. Emma had seen enough. She crouched down so she was level with him, her smile soft and her tone calm. "Hey there," she said gently. "I'm Emma. Do you like to draw?" From her apron pocket, she pulled out a small set of crayons and a napkin. She slid them onto the table like a magician revealing a trick. Tyler blinked, his rigid posture loosening slightly. With hesitant fingers, he picked up a blue crayon. "There you go," Emma encouraged. "Make me something amazing." A smile, faint but unmistakable, spread across his face as he began to draw. The restless movement slowed. The storm in his eyes eased. For the first time that evening, peace settled over him. But Emma wasn't the only one watching. At the far corner of the restaurant, half hidden in the shadows, a man in an expensive suit sat silently, his posture stiff, his gaze fixed on the boy. The dim lighting caught the edge of his polished watch as he lifted his glass, but he didn't drink. His expression was unreadable, cold to some, but there was a flicker of something else there. When Tyler's crayon rolled off the table and onto the floor near the stranger's shoes, Emma instinctively stepped forward. She picked it up, straightened, and found herself face to face with the man's piercing stare. For a moment, the restaurant noise faded. It was just the three of them, Emma, Tyler, and the silent watcher in the shadows. The story was only beginning. Emma straightened, still holding the crayon in her hand, caught off guard by the intensity of the man's stare. His eyes weren't hostile, but there was a weight in them, something unspoken, something heavy. For a fleeting moment, she thought she saw moisture glistening at the edges, but he quickly blinked it away. "Thank you," he said quietly, almost to himself, as if her small act of kindness had been meant for him instead of the boy. Emma tilted her head, uncertain. "I was just helping." He gave a small, humorless smile. "No, you were protecting him." The words lingered in the air, making Emma's chest tighten. Protecting him. She wasn't sure why that phrasing struck her so deeply, but it did. "I'm doing my job," she replied, though even she knew it was more than that. "This is a family restaurant, and that little boy has just as much right to be here as anyone else." The man's jaw clenched. His gaze softened for only a moment, and Emma could have sworn she saw his lips tremble before he whispered, "You have no idea how long I've been waiting to hear someone say that." Before Emma could respond, a voice interrupted from across the table. "Emma, I finished my picture." "Want to see?" Tyler's words rang out, carrying that unfiltered joy only children possessed. Emma turned back quickly, forcing a smile as she walked to his side. Tyler proudly held up the napkin drawing. It was shockingly detailed. Her kneeling beside him, the butterfly pin on her apron, the words "nice lady" written carefully across the top. Emma's heart swelled. "This is beautiful, Tyler," she said softly. "You're quite the artist." Tyler grinned, slipping the drawing into a worn folder he pulled from his backpack. His joy was pure, untouched by the storm swirling quietly around him. But not everyone was smiling. Mrs. Patterson, his caretaker, glanced at her phone, her brow furrowing. "Tyler, your father was supposed to pick you up 20 minutes ago. Let me try calling him again." She rose from the table, stepping aside to make the call, her voice growing more anxious with each failed attempt. Emma stayed close to Tyler, but her peripheral vision caught movement. The stranger had risen from his corner table. Slowly, deliberately, he walked toward them. His hands were raised slightly, palms open in a gesture of peace. Emma instinctively stepped in front of Tyler, her stance protective. "Whatever you're selling, this isn't the time or place," she said firmly. But the man's expression made her pause. His face wasn't hardened by arrogance or salesmanship, it was raw, vulnerable. His voice cracked when he spoke. "I'm not selling anything," he whispered. "I'm Michael Chen, and Tyler is my son." The words struck like lightning. Emma's eyes widened. She looked at Tyler, then back at the man, confusion battling with disbelief. That's impossible. Mrs. Patterson said his father was working late. Michael's breath shuddered. Mrs. Patterson doesn't know I'm here. She wouldn't have approved. His gaze flicked to Tyler, softening with an ache that cut deep. I've been coming here for weeks, sitting in that corner, watching him from a distance. Emma's grip on the crayon in her hand tightened. Watching? Why not just talk to him? Michael's laugh was bitter, hollow. Because I've been afraid. Afraid of what he'd think of me. Afraid he wouldn't want me in his life. His eyes glistened now, openly vulnerable. Afraid that the only thing I'd bring him is more pain. Emma's protective stance faltered. For the first time, she didn't just see a stranger, she saw a father drowning in regret. But Tyler, still arranging his crayons in perfect rows, was blissfully unaware of the storm building just a few feet away. And Emma knew this moment was about to change everything. Emma stood frozen, her breath caught between disbelief and caution. She studied Michael's face, searching for any trace of deception. His suit was expensive, his posture sharp, yet the raw tremor in his voice betrayed something deeply human, something broken. His son? Emma finally repeated, her tone edged with skepticism. If that's true, then where have you been? Michael's jaw flexed. He lowered his eyes to the floor as if the answer was too heavy to meet her gaze. That's the question I've been asking myself every single day. Emma's hands pressed against her apron, grounding herself. He's been here, growing, struggling, needing someone. Do you realize what it's like for a child to wonder if their father cares at all? Her voice had risen and Tyler looked up briefly before returning to his crayons, humming softly to himself. Michael flinched, his body recoiling at Emma's words. He turned his face away, but not before Emma saw the glimmer of guilt streaking his features. I thought, Michael's voice broke. He swallowed hard, steadying himself. I thought he'd be better without me. Emma's breath caught. Better without you? He's a child, Michael. A child doesn't stop needing his father because things get hard. Michael stepped closer, though his movements were hesitant, restrained, as if he feared crossing some invisible line. His hands tightened into fists at his sides. You think I don't know that? Every night I've replayed it. The meltdowns I couldn't handle, the questions I didn't know how to answer, the stares from people who looked at him like he didn't belong. And me? I saw their judgment and let it seep into me. I believed them. His voice cracked fully now, his eyes finally meeting Emma's. I convinced myself I was the problem, that Tyler deserved better than a father who couldn't understand him. Emma's throat tightened. She remembered nights with her own brother, how her parents struggled to interpret his silence, his routines, his sensitivities. She remembered being the only one who truly saw him. Michael's words weren't foreign, they were painfully familiar. Still, her voice stayed firm. So you left him. You gave up. Michael's face crumpled. I thought it was mercy. He exhaled shakily, a bitter laugh escaping. Turns out it was cowardice. Emma glanced toward Tyler. The boy was arranging crayons in a rainbow pattern now, oblivious to the storm of emotions swirling around him. Something about his focus, his quiet resilience, sharpened her resolve. Michael, Emma said softly but firmly. He doesn't see you as a coward. Right now, he probably doesn't even understand why you've been gone. But I promise you this, if you don't step up now, if you keep watching from the shadows instead of being the father he needs, one day he will understand, and it will hurt him more than you can imagine. The weight of her words settled like lead between them. Michael's breathing quickened, his face a mixture of fear and longing. He glanced toward Tyler, his expression softening with a grief that was almost unbearable to watch. Do you really think it's not too late? He asked, his voice trembling. Emma crossed her arms, steadying herself before answering. That's not for me to decide. That's for Tyler. As if summoned by the sound of his name, Tyler lifted his head again, his eyes drifting toward Michael. There was no recognition of the father he hadn't truly known, no anger, no rejection, only the innocent curiosity of a child. Michael's lips parted, his knees threatening to give way. For a moment, Emma feared he might break down right there in front of everyone. But instead, he drew a deep breath, straightening his back. I want to try, he whispered. His gaze locked on Tyler with a fragile determination. If he'll let me, I want to learn how to be the father he deserves. Emma studied him carefully. His words carried no bravado, no polished speeches, just raw sincerity, stripped of ego. For the first time she believed him, but she also knew that sincerity alone wouldn't bridge the distance between father and son. Actions would, and the first test was about to come sooner than either of them realized. The restaurant had grown quieter as the evening wound down. Only a few tables remained occupied, their chatter fading into a low hum beneath the clink of silverware. But for Emma, the entire room felt suspended, like the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would happen next. Michael stood just a few feet away from his son. His polished exterior, the suit, the expensive watch, the sharp posture, suddenly looked out of place, like armor that didn't belong here. Beneath it, Emma could see the cracks widening. Tyler, still engrossed in lining his crayons by shades of red and orange, finally sensed something. His small hands stilled, his head tilting slightly as though he could feel the shift in air. Slowly his gaze lifted, their eyes met. Emma's chest tightened. This was the moment. Tyler stared at the man who had been a distant shadow in his life, his young face unreadable. Seconds stretched into an eternity until finally, in the softest voice, Tyler spoke a single word. "Daddy." The sound of it broke Michael completely. He staggered forward, his knees nearly buckling, before he dropped down onto the floor beside the table. Tears pooled in his eyes faster than he could wipe them away. "Yes, buddy," he whispered hoarsely. "It's me." Tyler's brow furrowed. His voice was uncertain, fragile, as if testing something he wasn't sure would hold. "Are you mad at me?" Emma's breath caught. The question hung in the air, heavy and devastating. She saw Michael's face crumple, saw his body fold under the weight of his son's words. "Oh, Tyler." Michael's voice cracked as he reached out, trembling but not touching, waiting for permission. "I'm not mad at you. Never at you. I'm mad at myself. For leaving. For not being here when you needed me most." The boy blinked, his fingers tightening around a blue crayon before setting it down with deliberate care. Then, with a kind of cautious bravery, Tyler slid off his chair and stood in front of his father. Step by step, as though measuring each one, Tyler closed the small distance. His hand lifted, uncertain at first, then steadier as it brushed against Michael's cheek. The boy's fingers lingered there, soft against the roughness of stubble and saltwater tears. Emma's throat burned. She turned her face slightly to hide the tears gathering in her own eyes. "You're crying," Tyler said simply. Michael covered his son's tiny hand with his own. "Because I've missed you. Because I was wrong. And because I love you more than I can ever say." There was silence for a moment. Thick, trembling silence until Tyler spoke again, his voice matter-of-fact, almost blunt in the way children can be. "Mrs. Patterson said you were too busy for me." Michael winced, his chest tightening painfully. He swallowed hard. She was wrong. The truth is I was scared. I didn't understand you, Tyler, and instead of learning, I ran away. That was my mistake." Tyler tilted his head, considering this. "Emma says grown-ups need help sometimes too. Like how I need help when it's too loud." Emma's eyes widened. She hadn't expected Tyler to repeat her words, but she was glad he had. Michael's gaze flicked to Emma briefly, filled with gratitude and something like awe. "She's right," Michael whispered. "I need help understanding. I need you to teach me how to be the kind of dad you deserve." Tyler's lips curved, the faintest hint of a smile forming. "I'm a really good teacher." Emma said so. Michael let out a broken laugh, equal parts joy and grief, as he pulled his son into his arms. Tyler didn't resist. His small body leaned against his father's chest, tentative at first, then fully settling there, as though testing whether this embrace would hold, and it did. Emma turned slightly, giving them the smallest semblance of privacy in this very public place, though her heart felt fuller than it had in years. When Tyler finally pulled back, his eyes were serious again. "Are you going to leave me anymore?" The question pierced through the air like a blade. Michael gripped his son's shoulders, his voice steady, resolute. "No, buddy. Never again. I promise." The boy studied him for a long moment, then gave a single small nod, the kind that meant the world had tilted just a little back into place. Emma knew this was only the beginning. The wounds between them wouldn't heal overnight, but as she watched father and son share this fragile reconnection, she also knew something unbreakable had just begun to form. The air in the restaurant felt different now, lighter, though still fragile. Emma watched as Michael kept his hand on Tyler's shoulder, almost as if he feared that letting go might make the boy vanish again. Tyler didn't resist, but his little body was tense, alert, like he was still deciding whether this reunion was real or just another moment that might slip away. Mrs. Patterson returned, her brow furrowed in confusion as she spotted Michael kneeling beside his son. "Mr. Chen? I didn't realize—" Michael didn't let her finish. His voice was steady, quiet, but firm. "There's been a change of plans. Tyler and I need some time together." Mrs. Patterson hesitated, glancing at Emma as though for confirmation. Emma gave a small nod. Something inside her told her to trust this moment. "Would you like to get some ice cream with me, buddy?" Michael asked, turning to Tyler. His voice carried an almost pleading softness, as though offering far more than a simple treat. Tyler's face lit up briefly before dimming again. His gaze darted to Emma. "Can Emma come too? She likes vanilla with sprinkles, just like me." Michael's lips trembled into the first genuine smile Emma had seen on him. "That sounds perfect. If Emma isn't too busy saving other families tonight." Emma blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected invitation. She looked at Tyler's hopeful eyes and Michael's unspoken plea. Slowly she nodded. "I'd be honored." They left the restaurant together, the three of them. Michael walked a step behind at first, uncertain, as Tyler kept close to Emma. But when they reached the small ice cream shop down the street, something shifted. Inside, Tyler pressed his nose against the glass counter, scanning the colorful tubs of flavors. "Vanilla with sprinkles," he declared, pointing with certainty. Emma chuckled. "Classic choice." Michael leaned down, his voice tentative. "Would you like me to order for you?" Tyler considered, then shook his head. "I can tell them myself." Emma noticed Michael's reaction, surprise, quickly replaced by pride. He didn't interfere. Instead, he stood back as Tyler clearly, carefully placed his order. When they sat at a small table by the window, Tyler began arranging his sprinkles in careful patterns across the melting scoop. Michael watched intently, not with judgment but with fascination. Emma decided to bridge the silence. "Tyler's really good at patterns. He notices details most of us miss." Michael leaned closer. "I see that." His voice cracked with sincerity. "It's beautiful." Tyler looked up at his father, studying him as if weighing the truth of his words. Finally, he gave a small nod and returned to his ice cream. For the next half hour, Michael let Tyler lead the conversation. He listened as the boy explained why blue sprinkles always had to go last, how crayons worked better when lined in rainbow order, and why the world felt too loud sometimes. Michael didn't interrupt. He didn't correct. He just listened, really listened for the first time, and Emma saw Tyler notice. When it was time to leave, Tyler surprised everyone. He slipped his hand into his father's. Michael froze, glancing down at the small, trusting grip before looking at Emma with wide, tear-filled eyes. She gave him a simple nod. "Don't waste this." That night, as they stood by the curb waiting for the car, Tyler turned to Michael with another blunt question. "Are you still busy at work?" Michael crouched to his level. "I'll always have work, buddy. But I promise you this, I'll never let it come before you again." Tyler studied him, then pressed. "What if you forget?" Michael's throat tightened. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. "Then you remind me. Call me, text me, shout at me if you have to, but I'm not going anywhere. You're my #1 job now." Tyler's serious expression softened. "Okay, but I'm a really loud shouter." Michael laughed, pulling him into another embrace. Emma watched quietly from a step away. She could see it, the beginning of a bond being rebuilt, fragile but real. The ice between them had cracked, and though healing would take time, something sacred had begun. As they drove off, Tyler nestled against his father's side in the back seat, chattering about sprinkles and crayons. Michael looked out the window once, catching Emma's gaze through the glass. He mouthed a single word. "Thank you." Emma stood on the sidewalk long after the car disappeared, her heart both heavy and hopeful. She knew Michael had a long road ahead. Earning trust wasn't about promises whispered over ice cream, but about proving them in the quiet, everyday moments. But tonight was a start, and sometimes, Emma thought, a start is all a family needs. The hum of Miller's family restaurant on a Friday night was familiar to Emma. She moved through the dining room with her usual grace, tray balanced, apron tied, but her eyes always drifted toward one corner booth, the booth that had quietly become more than just a table. 6 months had passed since that night when everything changed. Now, that booth belonged to Tyler and his father. Tonight, Emma paused at the kitchen door, a smile tugging at her lips as she spotted Tyler carefully arranging art supplies across the table. The crayons were lined in neat rows, sketch pads stacked precisely. Beside him, Michael Chen sat with an ease Emma hadn't seen before. He wasn't the distant man in a tailored suit anymore. He was a father leaning across the table, his tie loosened, his phone nowhere in sight. "Emma," Tyler's voice rang out when he spotted her. He waved excitedly, nearly knocking over his juice in the process. "Look what I made in art therapy." Emma walked over, setting her tray down long enough to lean closer. Tyler pulled a painting from his folder, a swirl of bright, warm colors surrounding the familiar shape of their booth. "Dr. Martinez says I'm really good at showing feelings with colors," Tyler explained proudly. "This one shows how happy I feel here." Emma's throat tightened. "It's beautiful, Tyler, you captured it perfectly." Michael reached across the table, gently ruffling his son's hair. "It really is, buddy. Just like all your artwork." His voice held pride, unshaken and steady. Emma slid into the booth for her short break. Something of a tradition now. She sipped her water as she glanced between father and son, marveling at how much had changed. "How did the school meeting go this week?" she asked. Michael's eyes brightened. "Really well, actually. Tyler's new teacher listened when I explained what works for him. And I finally understood what you meant months ago, about advocating instead of apologizing." Emma smiled. "That's a big shift." Michael nodded. "I even joined a support group for parents of kids with autism. Turns out I'm not alone in this. I'm learning every day." Tyler looked up from carefully shading a corner of his painting. "Daddy doesn't get as worried about me anymore." And he learned about STEM toys. He reached into his pocket, proudly holding up a small fidget spinner. "This one helps when the world gets too loud." Emma felt her heart swell. "That's wonderful, Tyler. You're teaching your dad just as much as he's teaching you." Michael leaned forward, his expression serious. "Emma, I need you to know something." His gaze locked on hers. "What you did that night, it didn't just help Tyler through a meltdown. It changed our entire lives. You showed me how to see my son, his brilliance, his creativity, instead of focusing on what I thought was broken." Emma's cheeks warmed, but before she could respond, Tyler chimed in. "And now Daddy knows that when I line up my food, it's not weird, it's organizing. And when I need quiet time, it's not hiding, it's recharging my brain." Michael chuckled softly. "Out of the mouths of geniuses." Emma wiped at the corner of her eye, touched by the simple truth of Tyler's words. "The best part," she said gently, "is watching you two become a team." Michael hesitated, then leaned back. "We've been thinking about starting something at the community center, a family group for parents and kids, a place to learn about neurodiversity together, to celebrate it instead of hiding it. Would you consider helping us get it started?" Emma glanced around the restaurant, her gaze lingering on the booth where it had all begun. A simple act of kindness had rippled outward into something she never could have imagined. She turned back to them, her smile soft. "I can't think of anything I'd rather do." Tyler carefully put his painting away and looked at them both with his serious, thoughtful expression, the one he wore when he had something important to say. "You know what I learned?" he asked quietly. Michael tilted his head. "What's that, buddy?" "Sometimes the best families aren't the ones that start perfect," Tyler said. "They're the ones that learn how to love each other the right way." For a moment, neither adult spoke. The words hung in the air, wise and pure. Michael reached across the table, taking his son's hand. Emma covered Tyler's other hand with her own, and in that simple connection, Emma realized Tyler was right. Families weren't defined by flawless beginnings. They were built in the learning, in the forgiveness, and in the willingness to truly see one another. As she returned to her shift, she looked back one last time at the corner booth, the place where kindness had sparked transformation. Sometimes, Emma thought, the most beautiful changes begin with the smallest acts of understanding. The community center buzzed with nervous energy on Saturday morning. Folding chairs lined the multi-purpose room, a long table of snacks sat near the back, and handmade posters decorated the walls, each painted with colorful phrases like different, not less, and celebrate every mind. Emma stood by the entrance, greeting families as they trickled in. Some parents looked exhausted, clutching coffee cups like lifelines. Others wore guarded expressions, as if bracing themselves for judgment they'd experienced too many times before. Beside them, children shifted restlessly, some flapping their hands, some spinning in circles, some clinging tightly to favorite toys. Emma's eyes softened. She saw in every child a reflection of Tyler, and in every parent, a shadow of the man Michael had once been. Lost, overwhelmed, desperate for guidance. Emma. She turned to see Michael carrying a box of art supplies with Tyler bouncing at his side. The boy's face lit up as he spotted the kids already drawing at the back table. "Go on, buddy," Michael said, patting his son's shoulder. Tyler zipped off to join the group, already pulling out his crayons. Emma smiled. "Looks like he's in his element." Michael exhaled, glancing around the room. "You think anyone will actually stay?" His voice held a trace of doubt. "They'll stay," Emma assured him, "because for the first time they'll feel seen." Moments later, Michael stepped to the front of the room. He wore no suit today, only a simple sweater and jeans, but his presence commanded quiet. He cleared his throat, then spoke with the kind of honesty that silenced every whisper. "My name is Michael Chen. 6 months ago, I didn't understand my son. I thought his behaviors were something to fix. I thought he needed to change." He paused, his eyes finding Tyler across the room. "I was wrong. What needed to change was me." The room shifted, parents leaning forward, children pausing mid-play. Michael continued, voice steady. "When my son had a public meltdown, a stranger, Emma, showed me how to meet him with patience instead of panic. That moment changed my life. It's why we're here today. This group isn't about curing anyone. It's about learning to listen, to adapt, and to celebrate the unique ways our kids see the world." A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience. A mother in the second row dabbed at her eyes. A father let out a shaky breath. Emma stepped forward, adding gently, "This is a safe place. No judgment, no shame, just support." The ice broke. One by one, parents began sharing their stories. "My daughter won't eat unless her food is separated," one mother confessed. "People always criticize me for letting her be picky." Michael smiled softly. "Tyler does the same. It's not a flaw, it's how they find comfort." "My son repeats the same questions 100 times, another father admitted. "Sometimes I lose my patience," Emma nodded. Repetition can be his way of seeking reassurance. "It's okay to feel tired, but here we'll help each other find strategies." As the parents spoke, children blossomed. Tyler led a small group in drawing, proudly explaining his favorite technique for blending colors. A little girl built towers of blocks taller than herself, while another boy lined up toy cars in perfect rows. For once, no one told them to stop. No one called it odd. It was celebrated. Laughter slowly filled the room. The stiffness dissolved. Families began trading phone numbers, swapping resources, sharing relief in realizing they weren't alone. At one point, a mother approached Emma with tears in her eyes. "You don't know what this means," she whispered. "I felt so isolated, but here, for the first time, I feel like my child belongs." Emma squeezed her hand. "You both belong." Later, as the meeting wound down, Tyler tugged at his father's sleeve. "Daddy, can we do this every week?" Michael's voice cracked with emotion. "Yes, buddy." Every week, Emma watched them, heartful. She knew this was more than a support group. It was a movement, a place where compassion replaced judgment, where differences became strengths. As families began packing up, Michael caught Emma's eye. "We did it," he said quietly, almost in disbelief. She shook her head. "No, you did it. You chose to be the kind of father Tyler needed. This," she gestured to the bustling room, "is the result of that choice." Michael looked back at the families, his face soft with gratitude. "Then let's keep choosing it. Not just for Tyler, for every child like him." And in that moment, Emma realized this was only the beginning. The ripple that had started in a restaurant booth had grown into waves. Waves that would reach countless families, carrying with them a simple but powerful truth. Different didn't mean broken. Different meant extraordinary. 3 months later, the community center looked nothing like it had before. The once empty multi-purpose room was alive with color and sound. Children painted murals across the walls, filling them with rainbows, galaxies, and wild forests. Parents clustered in small groups, trading laughter, encouragement, and sometimes tears. What had started as a small gathering of a handful of families had become a thriving community. Word had spread through neighbors, schools, even local news. People traveled across town just to be part of it. Emma stood at the refreshment table watching it all unfold with quiet pride. It was hard to believe that a single moment in a restaurant had led to this. She thought back to Tyler's wide, frightened eyes, to the way the stranger, Michael, had sat silently in the shadows, too afraid to approach his son. Now that same man was at the front of the room, microphone in hand, speaking with a confidence born from love. "My son Tyler has taught me more than any boardroom or business deal ever could," Michael said, his voice steady, rich with emotion. "He's taught me patience, empathy, and the beauty of seeing the world differently. This group isn't just about children on the spectrum. It's about all of us learning to love without conditions." Applause filled the room. Tyler, sitting cross-legged on the floor with crayons scattered around him, looked up and grinned at his father. Emma felt a lump in her throat. She'd never married, never had children of her own, but in moments like this she felt like life had given her a different kind of family, a bigger one than she'd ever imagined. When the meeting ended, parents lingered, reluctant to leave. A boy with headphones gave Tyler a fist bump. A mother hugged Emma tightly, whispering, "You gave us hope." Michael joined Emma by the doorway as families filtered out. For a moment they just stood side by side, watching the ripple of connections they had sparked spread further and further. "You know," Michael said quietly, "6 months ago I was terrified I'd never know my son. Now I can't imagine my life without seeing the world through his eyes." Emma smiled. "That's the power of love. It doesn't just change children, it changes parents too." Michael glanced at her, gratitude etched into every line of his face. "I owe that to you. If you hadn't stepped in that night at the restaurant..." Emma shook her head. "Don't give me the credit. You made the choice. You showed up. And that's what Tyler will remember. Not me. You." Michael's eyes softened as he looked back at his son. Tyler was packing his drawings into a folder, humming quietly to himself. A simple picture of a butterfly, Emma's pin, sat on top of the stack. "Still," Michael said, his voice catching, "you changed everything." Emma didn't reply. She didn't need to. The truth was written in Tyler's smile, in the warmth filling the room, in the way families who once felt broken now stood taller, stronger, united. Outside, the late afternoon sun spilled golden light across the parking lot. Children darted between cars, their laughter echoing. Parents waved, promising to see each other next week. It was more than a group now. It was a movement growing roots deep into the community. As the last car pulled away, Emma turned to Michael and Tyler. "So," she asked lightly, "same time next week?" Michael chuckled, slipping his hand into his son's. "Absolutely. This is just the beginning." Tyler looked up, his voice filled with certainty. "We're making the world nicer, right?" Emma's heart swelled. She crouched down, meeting his gaze. "That's exactly what you're doing, Tyler. One picture, one smile, one moment at a time." And in that quiet parking lot, under the glow of the setting sun, the three of them stood together, not as Waitress, Billionaire, and Boy, but as a family of choice, bound by something stronger than circumstance. Love had rewritten their story, and now it was rewriting the world.